What's up, everyone? This is your host, Jose Marquez, and I want to welcome you to the Sunday BYOB podcast on YouTube. BYOB means Bring Your Own Bible, and our goal is to make it come alive for you. We invite a wide range of guests to share their stories of triumph, joy, victory, and sorrow, and each episode is designed to talk about real issues with real people about a real God. We hope that you are curious, because if you are, you have tuned into the right place. Let's go.
What's going on, guys? It's Pastor Marquez here, and I have found the fountain of youth.
You just said I look old.
My name is Ruben Remedios, and I have been offered the honor of hosting and sitting between two of my favorite people that I look up to in the faith. These were the first two men to actually even share and really take me under their tutelage and mentorship. Pastor Marquez used to say, "You're going to be a teacher." He used to look at me like, "This guy's going to be a teacher." I'd be like, "How do you know?" He'd be like, "Because you ask questions." And sure enough, I'm a pastor, a preacher, but it's all been thanks to their roles in my life. So to the right of me, you should know if you're tuned into BYOB, is Jose Marquez.
And if you're not, you're missing out on a lot of good content.
Yes. And to the left, back for the third time now? Is he the
No,
third
this
time?
is
Be the fourth.
Oh, you
Yeah.
are what?
Fourth.
Frequent flyer.
It's a regular.
Pastor Rolando Remedios, the slightly better looking brother in the family. But I have the college degrees, so
Love being here.
I'm the brains, he's the brawn. No. He's the beauty.
I'm the beauty.
But yeah, I'm excited to do this special moment, have this special moment of hosting the show. I have been given full authority. That's what I've been told, right?
Yes.
Full authority. No, this. And so I'm going to be interviewing them. And his lovely wife might be chiming in. Marquez's wife might be chiming in with some questions as well. Hopefully you do, because you got some good questions. Last time I was here, she asked me an amazing question, which you got to go tune in and see that one if you haven't. But let's get it started. Let's start with a very simple question, and I'll just leave it for whoever wants to take it.
Mm-hmm.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm blessed. I'm well. I haven't been this good in a long, long time. I mean, Pastor Ro knows my story probably deeper than most. Yeah. And man, it's been some valleys. And then right when I thought I was like getting out of that valley, I found my way into another valley. But honestly, God has been so good. He's been blessing me in amazing ways. And I truly believe it's because of I finally found the one that I feel God had for me for many, many years. My wife has been such a blessing, honestly, and has really helped get me to where I feel I needed to be. It took a while, but I'm here, and I'm blessed, and I'm happy. I'm excited. I can't wait to see what else God has in store.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm doing good. Still married to the same woman for the last 10 years. Still have my beautiful two children of my own and two of my stepchildren. Our ages are 22, 20, going to be 16, and 12.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
In the house. And pray for me because my daughter is 12, man.
Wow.
She's growing up.
Wow. Yeah. And that's my niece, so pray for me.
That preteen.
Yeah. She's an amazing girl. She just joined our team, our photography team, and so she's the one taking the pictures.
So cool.
Bishop has been part of the media team for the last 3 years, and he's been rolling with that team. He's actually taking on an additional role of the one that's setting it up throughout the week. So the message comes in, he puts it on the presenter, he sets up on Sunday. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Okay, nice. Good to hear about that, guys. This one's specifically for Ro. Who's your favorite brother in the family? I'm kidding. No, but I did want to put together an icebreaker question. The way that I designed the questions is I want to hear from both of you. I think, just sitting between these two, I could hear them talk all day. After we end, I'm probably gonna still pick their brains, then start a group chat, and then pick their brains. So yeah, I do want to hear from both of you with each question, and then we might rabbit trail. Keep it fun. You have 2 7s here, so it's gonna go wherever. Icebreaker question though: who was your childhood hero? And I'll start with Ro.
Childhood hero. That's interesting. Like on TV or
However, what question I wanted to ask, and I just didn't know if Marquez was familiar with wrestling. Did you grow up on wrestling? All right, then we can ask the real question: who was your favorite wrestler, and why?
All right, so I think that's a lot. That narrows it
I thought it
down.
was the same thing. My childhood hero was the wrestlers on TV.
Yeah, there was a lot of people that I looked up to, but as a wrestler, my absolute favorite wrestler, I'm talking about, I had a shrine of him on the wall, was the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. Bret the Hitman Hart, 1997, got screwed over by Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon. Still healing from that, but we are recouping step by step.
Mine's is probably it's not even WWF. Like I went to the NWA, WCW route, and mine's was Sting.
Sting.
I loved me some Sting, and just the obstacles he had to overcome. He was never he was basically never the favorite. Like you had Ric Flair, the Four Horsemen, and Sting. But he was willing to take them all. I like both. I like both, but I like the dark one. Like when he came out looking like the Crow. That to me was cool. When he had that episode when they showed him for the first time, and I was like, wow,
Everybody went crazy.
I was wild. It was wild.
And he's come back a few times, even recently.
Yeah, Sting was my guy.
And a believer.
Yeah.
For me is Shawn Michaels, who's also a believer too. But Shawn, sorry, because that's my favorite, and he did screw over Bret Hart. It was crazy. All right, now let's get into the first question. I'm excited for this question. What are you most grateful about each other for?
Oh,
so good.
Wow.
Yeah, they put a psych major here.
You could tell you got a psych major.
I'll start. For me, I'm most grateful for like right now. In the sense that no matter what has happened, no matter how I've failed you in the past, because I did, and we had this conversation on your kitchen table, you're still willing to have relationship. You're still willing to draw from me at times. You're still willing to encourage me at other times. And when Love Is Your Logo, that book that's going to come out, I know it's going to be a multi-million-dollar best-selling book because it's you. And what I'm most grateful for is simply the fact that regardless of, I feel like you still see me the same way. And I'm thankful for that because there's been so many that have taken a different route. And you're still you. And I praise God for that.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. There's a lot to say here. And of course try to say without getting emotional, right? But for sure I am 2 primary things, which is Pastor Marquez, when he came into my life, was in a very difficult moment in my life. And throughout the years, he was always the best encourager. Always the best encourager. This is before we actually began a relationship. But there was a time that our relationship went to the next level, and it became just a pastor and his member and a spiritual father and a spiritual son. And so the first reason is thank you for believing in me from day one. I've said this to Lisa several times, and I've said that I've had several leaders. I've been in church for 20 years. I know what you're thinking all my life, but I've been in church for 20 years, in ministry for 20 years, and I don't think I've ever had anybody believe in me like you've believed in me.
Believe in you.
And believe in me. And so there's something about a father believing in their children that is irreplaceable. That is completely irreplaceable. What? Am I saying that right?
You were good.
Right? It's irreplaceable. There we go. That is irreplaceable. There's just nothing that fills that void like the voice of a father believing in their spiritual son. So for me, that was, again, something that I will forever be grateful for, you coming into my life and being that in my life. And the second thing is that you began the journey in my life of questioning the things that I've been taught and looking at the word the way I do today all started with you. You know, and that's I went to Institute before I came in contact with you, you know, before you and I entered relationship. You opened up the word before me in a way that I had never seen before. And that was one of those, you know, you look back in certain pivotal moments. That was definitely one of those moments where, like, yeah, I would not read the Bible the way I do today if it wasn't for the impact you had in my life. Wow. And I say that with no exaggeration. Wow. No exaggeration. So thank you. And for marrying Lisa and I.
In the midst of a hurricane. In the midst of a hurricane.
Marry me and my wife. Thank you.
I believe Anna has a question.
Yes, I do have a question.
She has the best podcast voice. This is incredible. Every time she jumps on the mic, I'm like, yes, keep talking.
So this is a two-part question for both of you guys. Since you're both pastors, you guys are both amazing pastors. Was deciding to become a pastor a choice, or did you feel like it was a calling? And if it wasn't a choice, would you have chosen that role, and why?
Wow. That's great.
Yeah. I can repeat if you want.
No, I think I got it. I want to say initially, no. Initially, I don't, you know, for me, it wasn't, I'm going to be a pastor, you know. There came a time that I want to say is like an irresistible call of God, like something that compels you that, something that compels you to the degree that you feel like you were not meant to do anything else but that. And so I actually had a conversation with George, another pastor friend of mine, George, and I told him that for me, pound for pound, I feel like that's what I've been called to do. And that's where that's what God has created in my heart, is to be a shepherd, is to be someone that tends to their flock, those that he's entrusted in my care. So initially, for me, it wasn't a desire, you know, like I would look at pastors and I never had a desire to be one. I always saw myself as a businessman. 17 years old, the Lord began speaking to me from a young age, that I was called into ministry, that I was called to be a pastor. And I'm talking about, this was like in the span of a year, maybe 2 years, just prophetic word over and over that God was calling me to be a pastor and a preacher. And then it started feeling like I could not resist. It just, like, this was like God made me want it, you know? And I think in that case, people like Pastor Sam Rodriguez, who became a model of a pastor that I wanted to be like, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Wow.
It's so good. I mean, for me, I've always said, if you want to be a pastor, you probably shouldn't be.
Right. We're like, I want to be.
Yeah, like it's rah. This is what I'm gonna. It's definitely been a calling for me, a calling that at times I don't want to respond to. Because
send it to voicemail.
Yeah, like I don't want this, Lord, and the Lord just finds a way to gather people that want to learn, that want to grow, that want to be pastored and things like that. So it's like I try to run away from it, but I can't. I mean, I'm currently trying to run away from it. But it's just, it's a calling. It's thoroughly a calling. I know you had a second part to the question.
Yeah. If it wasn't a choice, then would you have chosen this role for yourself?
Okay. I definitely would not. And I want to share why. It's a very painful calling. You know, I feel like when you think about the fivefold ministry, right? Apostles and prophets, evangelists, pastors and teachers. I would say the pastor has to be the one that hurts the most. Because you're the one that's in covenant with the sheep, seeing them grow, feeding them, and then they leave and they don't know you, or they leave and they, you know, it hurts. It hurts. So I mean, I would love to just be someone that or an apostle that starts a church and keeps it moving, and or you know, the evangelist that preaches to these large masses and never sees them again. Like, that's fun. Yeah. But when it comes to a pastor, man, if you're a real pastor, you got some scars to you. That's why I think, like Paul, you know, he was like, from here on out, nobody bothered me, because I carry on me the marks of Christ. Like, I think those marks weren't as much the whippings as they were the lives that he had lost along the way.
I kind of knew for sure that I was, like, not that I was called, but it wasn't even it was one of those moments that you have, like, I know I'm a pastor, you know. And I had that moment when I started realizing that I genuinely enjoyed preaching more at my church than anywhere else.
That's true.
That's interesting.
You know, because, you know, I did traveling for 10 years.
That's so good.
Going to different, and I loved it. And I agree with you 100%. By choice, that for me was more rewarding. You do the altar calls, you see people give their life to Jesus. On to the next church.
People are always more excited because you're the new voice.
You preach. You know, you pretty much say everything their pastor has said for the last 10 years. And now
you said it. Exactly.
And now they're receptive to what you said. And you see the altar call. People give their life to Jesus. So rewarding. Like, thank you, Jesus. You know, genuinely, right? Genuinely, like, rewarding. Like, thank you, Jesus. Like, you see these lives giving themselves over to God. And I loved doing that for the time that I did do it. But I remember having this moment that I love preaching at my church.
There's nothing like seeing your own sheep grow week after week.
And that was like, that's when I knew. That's when I was like, I know I'm definitely not an evangelist anymore. Like, I'm a pastor now, because I love traveling, but don't get me, I love preaching at other people's churches, but for me, I love preaching at home.
That's good.
Yeah. Really good question. Really good.
She's so good, right?
No,
She
she should be here. I want to just do the filler questions. My next one is for you guys. Why do you believe in God?
I'll jump on. All right, I'll jump. So I like to say three things. It was my encounter with Jesus, my daily experience with Jesus, and my education. So I like to say the 3 E's.
Yeah, he's a pastor.
The alliteration is real. Yeah, so for me, it was that there was that moment that, and the reason I answer it that way is because I remember this person in the train asked my wife that question. She was asked, why do you believe? Why do you believe in God? Why do you believe in Jesus? And she was like, I was just like, I didn't know how to really answer. Like, I just knew that I did, And when I gave it some thought, I just said, yeah, there's no doubt that encounter, that initial encounter with Jesus. And I'll never forget it. I was 17 years old. I was in church. I was there for the wrong reasons. I was looking at the girls, and I had my eye on them, and I was going to come to church just for them, and I was doing so. And in one of those moments, what we looking back say, the Holy Spirit kind of touched my heart, and I remember him saying to me, like, hey, I've called you, and there's people that won't hear my voice because it's not coming out of your mouth. Right. That did it for me. I don't know. To me, it's not the most, poetic, you know what I mean? Like, God, you could have said anything else that could have caught my attention, but for whatever reason, that did it for me. It just did. And that encounter, I want to say, is like, I describe it as like, those burning bush moments, where just, God chiseled his word in my heart. And I only have maybe a handful of those in the time that I've been serving the Lord. But that initial encounter was undeniable. That was just like, God grabbed me. I knew from that day forth that I would spend the rest of my life following Jesus. And not perfectly, but I knew that. The second thing is my just my daily experience. Just my everyday experience with the Lord. Like, it's every day for me, you know? So, it's like telling me, why do you believe in your children? Because I talk to them every day.
Right.
You know, and so these daily experiences that I have with God, and then ultimately in those moments of doubt, you know, when you second guess, you know, I've spent some time educating myself on who God is, on the Word, on outside sources, on people like William Lane Craig. And so these people have helped me educate myself on the existence of God and the God of the Bible, that is the person of Jesus Christ. So I think those three things have been the foundation for why I believe in God. I believe in him because my encounter, that radical encounter that I had with God that changed my life forever. The daily experience since then of talking to him. Yeah. And lastly, because I've studied, and for me, it's not just, you know, for lack of a better term, blind faith. It is that reasonable faith that they have great reason to believe in Jesus.
So good. So. For me, I would say it's just my life. Like when I think about my life, I don't, like, I shouldn't be here. You know what I mean? Like when I was a kid, a fire is literally at my doorway. I make it out. 2 years later, another fire in the apartment next door. The whole building crumbles to the ground. I make it out. A few years later, I'm in a car accident. A trailer hits my car. I break 2 ribs. My lungs collapse. I'm in a coma for a few days. I make it out.
Wow.
Just a few years ago, I'm taking my son food at his school in Albright, which is in Reading. My car hits a barricade. It slides. The battery comes loose. I'm in a car that's not moving. There's a truck coming my way. Instead, I start screaming out. I say, God, not like this.
Wow.
And it wasn't a begging. I was like, not like this. It was an authoritative moment where I was like, God, this is not how it's gonna end. The truck literally spins, makes itself parallel, blocks me.
Wow.
The truck driver gets out and helps me push my car to the side of the highway.
Wow.
I make it out.
Wow.
You know, when I think about the many times that I've tried to destroy my own life with my bad decision making, to have the wife that I have now, my life is good. Like,
wow.
And I can't accredit any of that to anyone but God. I mean, I dropped out of high school my freshman year. How do I have God, what God has given me? Like, come on, bro. It could only be God. You know, so I mean, my whole life is accredited to him. And I don't say that religiously or no, that's what you said. No, it ain't about that.
Right.
Like, this is my life.
Wow.
Like, my life is a reflection of him, of his grace and his love. Like, that's so why I believe in God.
Yeah. I have one follow up, and then Anna has two. Do either of you deal with doubt? And if so, what do you do in those moments? And again, I'll leave it to whoever wants to answer, or I could swap. So Ro answered first, so I could.
I mean, I doubt daily. When you were sharing in a past episode, when you talked about atheism and some of the doubts that you wrestle with, I feel like I wrestle daily. My questions are deep, and we've shared some questions. I mean, I have my questions on hell, on the devil. I mean, I go in on some of the things that I struggle with, but I feel like that's why my faith is where it is, because I've always said your answers reveal where you've been, the level of growth that you have. Your questions reveal where you're headed.
Wow.
And that's why I just think questions are needed and necessary.
So good, yeah.
Your
Anna just got a third
answers reveal
question.
where you've been. Questions reveal where you're headed. That's so good.
Man. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have these moments of doubt for sure, you know, and every time the Lord has responded in a way that, and I've legit like just Oh, and when you say doubt, I think you're talking about like doubting God.
Yes, but feel free to go
Yeah.
wherever your mind takes you with the word doubt.
Yeah, I think that there are moments that I've doubted God. I don't know if I've like doubted God's existence. I want to say like I believed in God before I was even born. And sometimes I feel like like it's so weird. Like I don't think I've ever doubted God's existence.
That's so good.
It's never gone beyond like maybe a question, like does God exist, but I think
I love that. Yeah, like I feel, and I'm sorry because I'll forget. Like I feel like I've never doubted God's existence. I just feel like I doubt the interpretations others have about God, about godly things. Like that's where my doubts are.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
I've said to interject with his interjection. I always
This is what Thanksgiving in a Hispanic home looks like.
For me, I used to say it's not that I don't trust the Bible, I just don't trust who's brought it to me. Understanding that it's been translated, understanding that people have taught me to read a Bible, understanding that you could walk to you could be walking down the street, bump into the Mother Church of God people, and they will use the same YouVersion Bible app scripture, and it's like, that is possible. And so, I relate to that. What were you saying?
No, that I had those moments of doubt in some sense. I don't think I've ever doubted his existence. I've if there is something that I have doubted is at times his involvement. So I think when we talk about like agnostic and there is a belief there that there is a God, but he is completely, disconnected from humanity. Right. In some ways there have been those moments that I've had doubts, but God has remained faithful, through and through. And I think about that because I'm like, God don't need to answer me. Like God doesn't need to prove himself to me.
So good. Like when David said, "What is man that you are mindful of him?" Like,
but then he does.
But then and we're always on his mind.
And then he's like, then he does talk, and then he does show up, and he doesn't need to prove it, but he does, and that has been a tremendous thing for me, in my relationship with the Lord. So there's been doubts there. There's been doubts of even your calling, right? Like those are things that you wrestle with.
So true.
But again, I mean, if one thing I learned back in 2013 is that it would always be about me. So if we did great, it's because of my leadership, and if we did bad, it was because of my incompetence, and it was all glory to Ro. And the flip side to that was when things failed, it was like, you're terrible. So there was a beat up aspect to it. I think in those moments of just doubting your calling and doubting if you're good enough and doubting if you're, could you even do anything here? Man, God, again, just continuously is faithful and shows up in so many ways, whether it's through community, whether it's just you open up the scriptures and it's there, whether it's something you heard in the radio and it's just disconnected from what you're actually going through, but it's relevant in some way. God's been faithful.
That's good.
Anna?
Thank you, Ruben. So I think the church survived COVID and pandemic.
Hey.
Partly because of media, right? And when I mean the church, I mean like the capital C church, like the church in general. And I've seen both of you guys use media to further spread the gospel. So my question is, where do you think media will take the church post-pandemic?
It's really good.
Yeah, I think for me, I see media as an avenue in where we just two things. I feel like it will for sure expand our reach. 100%. It will for sure expand our reach, and that's where we could start. The B side to that would be that it would also the church would have to see that as a way of ministering.
Yes.
And if you don't have a high value in that, I think that your church will suffer in some ways. But I think that because the church, we our reach is going to expand, there it's going to be kind of like Netflix and Blockbuster. There's going to be, for lack of a better term, an audience there that we have to reach. You know, in the same way you would look at, well, there's a prison ministry and there's a homeless ministry. Well, this online ministry. So the prison ministry and the homeless ministry doesn't correspond the same way it does in a church service. You know, there's a way of addressing. You know, there's a way of adapting what you do to reach in the same way it would be with online an experience. And the only thing I would say that is that there is the limitations of an online experience, which I think that in some ways is not sustainable for community. And I think that as great as it can be, the reach needs to be there. It's like casting the net further or having a bigger net. And the second thing is that we need a ministry to do that. But we also need to understand that is supplemental. It's not good. It's not what the church looks like. That's the reach. That's an audience, but the goal is to become part of a community. There is just nothing like life transformation. That takes place in community.
That's really good. Yeah, and for me, while I do think that online ministry is always going to be a mark of what I do, because there's just so many people that you can reach that way that won't be reached any other way. I do feel that I'm at a place now where this group that I've been teaching for about a year, I have to figure out what I'm doing next. And because exactly what you said, like community is needed, that warmth of human touch is needed, that sharing of stories and sharing of experiences, being in a room together, it's needed, and that corporate blessing is needed. Like there's just so much that's needed. And so I agree with you 110%. It should always be seen as something that's supplemental and a branch of the heartbeat, which is the community that you're building. So I think online ministry is good. And there's still pastors that don't want to do it. And it's unfortunate because, they're just limiting their reach. They're limiting their effectiveness.
Yeah.
Good. Did you have more, Anna? Are you good? Okay. As we begin, I think we are at we are.
Should give us like a speed round.
It goes that
boom,
by
boom,
that
boom,
fast.
boom.
Yes,
Yes.
so good.
That's amazing.
I don't know if all right. Let's see if there's time after this question to do a speed round.
All right.
How do you describe your approach to reflecting the love of Christ?
Love is my logo.
Read that to me.
How do you describe your approach to reflecting the love of Christ?
I think for me the answer is found within the question. When you say reflecting, I think our love for others can only be an outpouring of what we've allowed the Lord to pour into us.
Yeah.
And our perception of His love becomes the reflection of the love that we then are able to give to others.
Our perception of His love becomes the reflection of others.
That's another chapter.
That's crazy. That's amazing. So I love that because that's absolutely correct. And in my book, Love is Our Logo,
Hey.
I have this part where I talk about John said that he was the beloved. How many times, Pastor Marquez?
Oh, man, I don't even know exactly how many times.
So he says it about 5 times. He says
I think Peter wanted to punch him in the face because of that.
Check this out, though. Check this out. The beloved, in his own gospel, says, John, the one whom Jesus loved. He says it 5 times in the gospel that he writes about himself. And the one whom Jesus loved. And we know about John, that John was always at the bosom, right? But I read this also in the Gospel of John that hit me. And it was this. He says in John chapter 13, first or second verse, he says, and he loved each of his disciples until the end. So now it gives me a different perspective on John.
That's good.
It wasn't that he saw himself more loved than the disciples.
Wow.
Because he understood that Jesus loved his disciples.
That's good.
He just identified with it more than the other disciples.
Because they didn't say it themselves.
So good.
And so
That's crazy.
when you are wrapped up in God's love, that's why when people ask me, how do I overcome porn addiction? Or how do I overcome this? And how do I overcome that? And I'm like, yeah, there's something more powerful than your self-discipline, and it's called the love of God.
So
And until you are submerged in that love is greater than your self-discipline. Okay. And so that love is what pulls you away from, the Bible says in Titus, I think chapter, in the book of Titus, in the epistle of Titus, it says, and grace was manifested in salvation and leads us away, or trains us to say no to ungodliness. The grace of God that was manifested and brought us salvation, which is Jesus, right? The personification of love. It's that. It's that. Romans chapter 12, it says, in view of his mercy. Like, in view of his mercy, present yourself. In view. I spent 11 chapters talking about the love of God. And then verse 12, in chapter 12, I say, in view of all that mercy, in view of his mercy, in view of his love, in view of all that he's done. And oftentimes we're like, oh, you got to present yourself as a self-sacrifice. You got to, no, presenting myself as a self-sacrifice, as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to him, is simply the consequences of viewing his mercy.
Yes. Yes.
And so when you say, well, the reflecting, if I'm trying to reflect, if I am earnestly trying to reflect God's love in the life of other people should always be an overflow of what's happening in yours. Like, it literally should always look like this. You fill this cup, and what's coming out of it, it's because there's so much in it already that it needs to pour into other vessels.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
It should never be you tilting yourself.
Wow.
It's just you're being so filled with the love of God that it just reflects on to others. I don't have forgiving power the way it's required. I don't got love. I don't got compassion power the way it's required. The way I can't love my wife that way. Honest. I can't love my wife. My worldview and my ego and my self-centeredness is greater than the love that I possess on my own.
That's good.
But when I allow his love
To be poured.
in, it just spills out of me.
Yes.
And so my homework is, all right, Lord, fill me with your love. And so I meditate on that. I think about that. I ponder that. I change my state of mind of me focus, and it's your love. It's your
So
love.
good.
And so when it's God's love, man, that thing spills over. Like, so yeah, it's easy to forgive because it's not yours. It's not in your strength.
Yeah.
It's easy to be generous because it's not yours. It's not in your strength. I remember, if I can just expound here, I remember there was an area in my life that I knew that God was dealing with, and it was in the area of unforgiveness. And I remember writing the people's name down. I'm like, I know that where I'm at, and this is Pastor Ro, by the way, just putting it out there. This is not, we like telling the testimonies before we met God. This is Pastor Ro. And there was 4 people that I knew that if I never saw them again, I would not care. If they told me that and I'm sorry to put it this graphic, but this is sincerely how I felt at the time. If they told me that they had died and passed away, I would not care, not one bit. And that's the ugliness that I still possess. And I remember having a conversation. We were talking about authenticity, right? And I remember talking to the Holy Spirit and say, Lord, I know that this is where I'm at. And I remember the Lord told me, every area that you hold of unforgiveness is vacant of my love. And I just remember, like, okay, Okay, Lord. Philippians, right? Philippians says, if you've got anything, if you've gotten anything out of your relationship with Christ, it says, then agree with one another and love one another. If you've gotten anything in your relationship with Christ,
So
you know,
good.
and so it was in that moment. I was like, okay, Lord, then I need you. I need you to fill that vacancy.
Yep.
I need you, because I know that I'm not good here. I know that this is not healthy for me. I know this is hurting me. This is hindering me. I know that it's making me miserable. And it was in those moments, and that was a process. You know, I knew where I was, and I just continuously began to submerge myself in the love of God so that I can reflect that love into others.
Wow. So good. Gentlemen and lady. I looked at Marquez when I said it's been a pleasure. We like to do something every episode here. At the end of every episode, we do a 1-minute synopsis.
Look at this guy. Let's go.
So Marquez and Ro, you guys will take turns taking. I guess since it's 1 minute, you guys each have 30 seconds. Let's see how you split it. And I think, coming from your expertises, talking to the church leader, ministry leader, future pastor, or current pastor, if you had 30 seconds to share something with them from the heart, what would it be? And look right at the camera.
For me, it's easy, because this is something I learned way later in my years of ministry, in my years of serving the Lord. And it's have the same compassion on yourself that you have with your church. Have the same mercy for yourself that you have with the church. Have the same patience with yourself that you have with your church. In other words, give to yourself what you so easily give to others, because I mean, we're our worst critics, we're our hardest judge, we're so hard on ourselves, and it makes you ineffective.
Yeah.
So I would just say that. Like, give yourself compassion, give yourself some mercy, give yourself some patience. You're still growing too.
Yeah. Yeah. I got advice for the members. I think my piece of advice would be something that's really resonated with me, particularly in the last 18 months, and it's been just to remember that though what we do is for God and for people, that our affirmation and that sense of approval cannot come from people. And if you place that in people, the expectation will not be met. And sometimes you'll get the applause, and sometimes you won't. But it doesn't belong there. So if you're a young pastor, minister, I would just remind you that we do this for the sake of people, but our approval doesn't come from people. It comes from the Lord.
So good. So good.
Awesome.
That's going to do it for us. Thank you for your time. Thank you for
Thank you for
allowing
hosting,
me
man.
to have this. Hey, as we close, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this. If this talk right here blessed you, it's going to be a blessing to someone else. So make sure you get the word out. And it also supports this amazing team, what they're doing. They're taking time out of this.
Give it up for the team.
Yeah. There are people behind these cameras, and I could kind of exposit on this. When you had someone else's church, you could always do that way. They are working hard, and they're putting everything they got into this, along with full-time jobs. So the shares support this amazing thing that's happening here. The likes, everything. It tells YouTube, this is good. So let them know. Love you guys. Thank you for trusting me and trusting Marquez for putting me in this seat. Thank you to the lovely Anna for all your amazing questions. Queen of questions. That needs to be her title. Have an amazing week, and we will see you next time.
Let's go.